This poem is called The Red House, Late March. 1. The Wrong Husband. How much misfortune precedes a bad marriage. I was a girl hurrying from the red house to the woods and below to the pond, jumping into the water, scorning my aunts who lowered themselves in carefully with little squeals. Then school, a dance, a few drinks, a car taking the turns too fast. Next I stood as white as the altar, vowing to live with the wrong husband. I did and said things I regretted. Ages passed, and I didn't know how to anything. Recover, repay, return, resume. 20-some years. The house we called red, because it is red, in one of the few direct observations my family ever made, is quiet when I arrive, though the surrounding pines wave their branches like great shaggy beasts, and below them the pond is piebald. I'm thinking I was mistaken coming back when I turn and see my cousin Nate walking up the worn drive, the image of my father, and the old love seizes me. He used to row us out to the middle of the pond and bait our lines, a small lesson in patience and timing we never learned well. We can't call up the fish comes when it will. Today, Nate welcomes me as if I had been away a few days, that's all. 2. The cocktail hour. The windy afternoon blows back the years. Girl with a fish, girl at a school, girl swinging between the arms of the lawn chairs as Mom and Dad talk with Nate and Dorothy about relatives and money, blaming those absent for everything, from looking exactly alike to alcoholism, complaining about the heat, the rain, the car, the post office, middle age, the clink of their glasses, the dogs whining, impatient for a walk, my father's cough as he lights another cigarette, now sacred, sublime quotidian. The waving pines, their soft floors, how I ran across the yard and came to a dead stop at my mother, leaned against her or passed my hand over her hand, just to be sure, as she sat beside the thick woods, the still moss-colored pond. 3. The pond. By midsummer the pond was warm and felt like swimming in thick, green-black bathwater. It glinted here and there with tiny stars and streams of fractured sunlight. Sometimes, as I let myself sink a little, tired from kicking and pulling with my arms all the way from the dock to the float, I'd feel a slimy length across my leg and cry out, "Snake!" But the grown-ups talking on the dock called back, "It's just a reed, the tail of a lily pad. There are no snakes," they cried. They failed to convince me, though by then we had entered and returned safely from many bodies of water, lakes and oceans, rivers, pools. We had crossed on boats and leapt from diving boards. We had learned to see under salt water and how to walk on stony floors. I loved to swim and needed to believe the calls from shore, but the pond was like no other body in its mossy solidity, its gravity, and because we owned it, it was ours. The unseen monster crossed my leg and clung to me as I kicked hard to free myself. I climbed the ladder to the dock and lay trembling from cold and fear in the sun, pressing my cheek against the warm, worn, dry wood, listening to the family's voices. They continued the endless conversation, sitting with their drinks beside the piles of oars, the fishing rods, the orange life preservers, the blue-green dragonflies darting back and forth on the pond's surface weightlessly. 4. They were afraid to stop talking because if they did, they would have to see what was happening underwater, feel the snake. After the first drink, Dad was drunk. We pretended not to notice and even offered him another. Mother, her arm draped over the chair, went on talking with Auntie Dot about the awful things: illness, mistakes, divorces, long train rides, ill-fitting clothes, bad cooking, bad neighborhoods. Beyond these lay all the things that could never be said, waiting quietly, like the pond, like we imagine the dead, as souls lingering with us. Number 5, the house. In 1921, it was an abandoned schoolhouse on some 100 acres of land. I'm sure my uncle bought it for a song. He and Dottie turned the one-room school into an open kitchen, scene of so many Thanksgivings and Sunday dinners. The living room with its view of the birches staggering down to the pond. And here it stands on my return one March afternoon, fulfilling its mission to endure. Nate is here, a son, and I, a daughter. But the curse of buying and selling was uttered long before. Nate's weathered face and bow-legged walk show the effort of it. He can't bring back our brothers, sisters, little cousins scattered all over the country. He keeps inviting us, and a few come back like me. Some, I hear, have turned mean. Some religious. Some have moved to the West Coast, and others refuse to stay in touch. Yet after dinner, taking one of 4 paths through the woods, I reach the pond and see Dad on the dock as he was. Not a ghost, but my love for him. His thinning black hair combed back, sitting alone, cross-legged on an aluminum chair and gazing into the woods. He brings his cigarette to his mouth, inhales deeply, lets the smoke out in one burst. It circles, hangs in the air, the life of my father, and dissolves there.